So I started watching Koreans' honest drunk opinions on Black Lives Matter, Dreads, and the N word with a Black American on YouTube. This is Danny from DKDK TV. And so it has this introduction where he's like talking to Mike, who is the Black American. Um, and it's like the introduction already rubs me the wrong way because it's like, should Koreans be expected to educate themselves? And it's like, Koreans aren't infants. Y'all need to stop infantilizing yourselves and your peers because y'all aren't babies. Like, we should all be expected to educate ourselves about cultural insensitivities, about complicated subjects. Like, if you're going to have a platform, especially like DKDKTV does, you should definitely be expected to educate yourself. And those guys really haven't across the years. It's been very like this. They have yet to do a video on blackness specifically and like anti-blackness that hasn't been kind of like shit. And like when they've brought it up in the past, like when with Amber, they called Amber's like moment of anti-blackness about the cops harassing that black man in the California train station. They called it a mistake, her saying that he deserved what happened to him. And so these aren't people that I really want talking about race, anti-blackness, whatever in general, but especially if at least one of the two is coming into it from this position of like we shouldn't really be expected to care, and like their past has just been really not great. And so like we are not even a minute in and I'm like, why? Why do this to me? Because why are y'all making me suffer? And also the idea of using a black man, a black American in particular, to kind of provide authenticity to your video, like, oh yes, a black American man said it was okay. Well, I've seen black American men say a lot of really fucking racist things are okay, so perhaps don't rely on black American men to uh, solely be your gateway to blackness and understanding what blackness is. Do y'all know how weird it is to watch this video? And so they're drinking soju, which I feel is just what you should do often, and just kind of broing it up. And Danny is like, "Let's talk about Black Lives Matter," and it's like, because at the end of the day, this is actually a really serious topic, and I understand like so the introduction to this series because this is very this is the first episode of Danny's series, basically like bros talk about their feelings while drunk, and it's whatever. I do that all the time, so I understand. But perhaps for a serious topic like systemic anti-blackness, police brutality, cultural appropriation, violence, perhaps getting drunk off your ass and giggling your way through it isn't the way to do it. So I've had my website, Stitches Media Mix, for 5 years. Before that, I had a Tumblr. So I've been doing like 8 years of writing and like educating people about racism, primarily anti-blackness and fandom. And even with that, right? So this expectation of education still like kind of bothers me that we must educate, right? But also at the same time, like you can't just tell anybody to Google something. Like at the same time, Black people in particular are expected to educate other people about anti-Blackness. Not only are these people not expected to listen, understand, or grow, right? There's this like pushback, like how dare you actually try to educate us? Like let us wallow in our ignorance. And so I'm listening, I'm watching the video while I'm doing my day job, the DKDK TV video, and I just feel like I don't understand in 2020, especially people who have seen Black people ever, who have empathy, who understand that being murdered by cops is wrong, need a primer, need that explanation of Black Lives Matter. Like where have you been in like the past 7 years? You know, because I don't know, it's something that's been bothering me, not just from this, but kind of across the board. Like Mike is currently explaining Black Lives Matter to the DKDKTV audience. Um, and I'm actually pretty sure that there are people in the audience who are like, oh, whoa, I didn't think about it that way. Oh, now I understand why saying all lives matter is wrong. But why why did it take this man in this moment on this channel to make you go, these people matter because they're people, you know? And I don't clearly I don't mind educating people. That's my whole thing, and I was a teacher briefly. Um, but it does kind of weigh on you that you have to keep doing it, and then people really don't listen until it's convenient, if it's ever convenient. And so when I'm watching this video and they're just chilling talking about this and like doing anti-blackness 101, it's just kind of draining to watch it. Maybe if I was younger, maybe if I wasn't black, I'd be like, oh, this is that good shit. They're educating me. I would like more of it. But because this is stuff I have known in some capacity forever, it's like, so I'm at the point in the video about the 12-minute mark where they start talking about cultural appropriation and the expectation, like Danny brings up, like when other people embrace Korean culture, like we're excited about it. And it's like, yes, but when Black people like K-pop or Korean dramas or Korean movies or anything related to Korea, we're not painting ourselves, lightening ourselves. That's not the norm. We're not dressing in Korean clothing to go take out our garbage. We're not, um, I don't want to say yellow face because I don't actually think that's the word, but that equivalent. We're not doing that in TV shows where there are supposed to be characters representing Koreans. Like, the whole thing is that the two, you can't make that comparison. Black cultures, Black American cultures, hip hop, um, in particular, but also just the idea of what it means to be a Black person is transformed into something really disrespectful. Like there's a drama, I don't remember the name, but it's out right now, and there's a character who's in blackface with dreads and well, locks, and like there's no respect there. That's not respecting Rastafarian culture. That's not respecting Black people. That's mocking them. That's being anti-Black. And so that, well, we would be excited to have this happen to us. No, you wouldn't. You would not be excited if BET had, you know, a really racist thing making fun of Koreans. You wouldn't be excited if a group of Black people decided they were going to make a trot group, you know? And that statement of like, well, we would be fine with it in your shoes is always bullshit, because you wouldn't be. You know, this idea that we as Black Americans should be proud that other people take our cultural artifacts, essentially take hip hop, take hair, and turn it into costumes, make millions off of it. That we should be grateful that, you know, celebrities are willing to perm their hair into little afros, that celebrities are wearing blackface, that celebrities think swag is a word anyone uses in 2020. Also, I'm really tired of swagging as a verb, or swag as a verb. I'm really tired of it, just letting y'all know. Like, don't complain, you should be grateful, is what I get from a lot of this. And Danny is pretty much like not getting that it's not about being grateful. It's about um across the, I guess, lifespan of Korean pop and hip hop, blackness has been used um, as a costume, and Black people have been kind of used as props, also in service, because many of the producers and songwriters, like for SM in particular, and maybe Big Hit, I don't know about YG or JYP, but they've been black, right? Like the saying that these artists could or should speak up, especially like if your goal is an R&B sound. Like I'm not expecting Twice to say anything. I would never, because I don't see why they would, aside from caring about their black fans. But beyond that, the association of Twice with black cultures isn't a thing. But BTS, Monsta X, groups that have a hip hop sound that used a hip hop aesthetic to the point of trying to kind of appear racially ambiguous in their early, with at least one member trying to look racially ambiguous in their starting point. These are people who see blackness as something useful, and the bare minimum should be like, hey, black people presumably listening to our music, you guys matter. That's not asking too much, And then this is where that idea of we're expected to educate, but they're not expected to listen, right? So like I'm not allowed to say just Google that shit, right? So I have my website. If I go, hey, can you read this like 5,000 word article on cultural appropriation? It's like, well, that's too hard. And yes, it is. It is very difficult. I wrote it in a fit of pique, or whatever you pronounce that word as. But there's no expectation that of care, right? So it's great that, and I have to do this, but it's great that Namjoon listened to Nas and really liked Jay-Z and grew up listening to hip hop, and his early concept looks were very much pulling from African American visuals, like the hood cosplay in 2013 and 14 was real. But going, hey, person who talks about loving your fans, can you show that you love your fans some more by speaking out about this thing that affects some of your fans, is like, oh, you can't do that. That's wrong. Because you should be grateful they even bothered to look like you in the first place. Like, I didn't ask you to wear us. Black people didn't go, please, Korean pop stars, wear us. We did not ever ask for that. And yet, that's the thing that we're constantly told to be grateful for. That these artists want to do hood cosplay, that they want to use African American vernacular English, that they talk endlessly about wanting to try new styles of black music. Like, I'm sorry, if you've never been near a trap house, you probably shouldn't even consider trap music as something that you're doing. Just saying. But it is frustrating, and the fact that this video has these two dudes kind of like gloss over what cultural appropriation is and why it matters, and why Koreans kind of like Korean entertainment companies peddling Korean culture as a soft power is different, and an export is different from how black music and black cultures have been exported along with anti-blackness from the United States without our consent, without our permission, and without respect. Like, those are two different things. They are not the same thing. Koreans are not exporting anti-Koreanness. They're exporting pride in their culture, pride in their music, pride in their celebrities. What the United States has historically exported when it comes to black people and black culture is anti-blackness. It's exported our visuals, our sound, our hair, without context, without commentary, without an understanding that the idol in Seoul who's wearing a gel twist for a concert is going to take those off. People are going to talk about his reggae hair. Netizens are going to be like, oh, that looks cute or that looks bad. But that artist will be fine. I can get fired for my hair in, I think, pretty much every state, because I think only one state has a protection for that. The Crown Act is only in one or two states. Like, it's not just hair, it's not just clothes, it's not just language, it's not just an exchange of cultures, because we're not exchanging cultures. One group is wearing another group. Like, it's a flesh suit of African Americanness, and I'm not going to be grateful for it. And the fact that both of them kind of feel, like both Danny and Mike seem to feel that we should be, is really fucked up. So there is a moment where where he's where Mike is telling a story about something that happened and it's not great. Um, and then Danny's like, now I know why you guys are pissed. Do you? Do you? How do you guys feel about Elvis? You guys being black people, because Mike is speaking for all of us Negroes. Y'all, I I went into this video, like I'm still going through this video. Um, I went into it going, this is gonna be shit because again, everything they've covered about anti-blackness across being DKDKTV has been shit. Um, like it has been. Sorry, that's kind of the thing I cover. They're shit. Um, but it's kind of interesting how it is shit. Um, because I at the same time that it's clear that Danny wants to learn to some extent, he doesn't really want to be challenged. He wants to learn, but he's still like slipping into missteps, like the you people thing, like setting Mike up as like the grand Negro opinionator is like, really? But also, part of the issue with all of the coverage and commentary on like Black Lives Matter, Black fans in K-pop and all of that has been that Black people are expected to be the single story. We are expected to be that face of whatever is going on, right? So there is pretty much ever only room for one of us in a space. Like literally in this video, there's only space for Mike. And one of the things that I find really interesting is like that doesn't really change. I don't know many other people who will have multiple Black people, multiple diverse opinions, disagreeing on things. Usually, when I listen to a Black person about something, it's a group of Black people with the same opinions, and they're usually very positive, very normative, especially when it comes to Korean pop and hip hop and appropriation and anti Blackness. And it is frustrating, very frustrating. Um, and the you people thing just set me off because you people, you people, uncomfy. So again, let's talk about hair because I'm just fucking going through it. But like most Koreans will never understand why locks or Koreans wearing hair like mine or what I used to have, the twist, the long twists, or afro perming their hair into afros. They will never understand why that's a bad thing. And it's like, again, can y'all stop fucking infantilizing Koreans? Can you guys stop? Because it is not helpful to be like, oh, these little babies won't understand. Well, considering that no one seems willing to try and educate Koreans, and that apparently most Koreans, according to people like Danny, are unwilling to research and educate themselves, like when an idol wears traditionally African American hairstyles and Black fans are like, oh well, this is terrible, like how can we educate, blah blah blah. One of the first things that happens is that the diehard fans are like, no, this isn't his fault, this is just he just wants to be a part of Black culture, um he just wants to experience blah blah blah, and it's just excuses upon excuses. And at the end of the day, um it doesn't help. Like you can tell me that you're emailing the producer or whatever all you want. You can talk about how it's just appreciation, not appropriation. But like this is where the education thing comes in. How many times can I tell y'all that the reason why cultural appropriation is that isn't because it's like an artist is physically punching me in the face when they wear their hair in twists, but it is that it contributes to an already weighty issue. How many times can I tell you that? So it's just really infuriating that Danny keeps coming back to, like, Koreans are satisfied when people embrace their culture. Like, so he brought up the hanbok, like people wearing it, and it's like there's a difference though between like honest cultural exchange and wearing a hanbok because you're in Korea, or you're at home, you've bought one from Korea or from a Korean seller, and you are at home wearing it, or you're going out wearing it, and cosplaying as a Korean. A lot of the people in and out of the idol industry, like a couple videos ago, I talked about appropriation and appreciation, and I talked about a salon in Itaewon where you had a lot of Koreans doing their hair up, kind of like mine, you know. Um, like, these aren't people that really seem to recognize that Black people are people, that we're complex individuals, that we have different ideas about different things, or that what is a cute, quirky, edgy style for them is something that can get us harmed, that costs us jobs, that can make us less valuable in the eyes of society. Like, wearing a hanbok is not the same thing as, you know, you pretending to be a baller and having swag by wearing a jersey and cornrowing your hair and whatever as a Korean. It's not the same thing at all, and he keeps trying to insist that it is, and Mike really isn't pushing back on that enough from Danny. He just kind of like, I see where you're coming from, I get where you're coming from, and it's like, weak link, you are one. Gonna be real, it's very frustrating that they've had this essentially the same thing of like, we should be grateful like 2 or 3 times already. I will not be grateful. I will not be grateful. And so Mike is closer to not caring about cultural appropriation, about that particular brand of anti-Blackness, than he is to caring, right? So when I was doing my live tweeting for Good Girl, I talked about how Han Hyun Min and Chris Lyons, who was on Itaewon Class, the camera for Good Girl, when they were in the audience, kept flicking over to them, showing them engaging with the music and bopping to the beat. And I think one of the songs had a really good hook. So they were like repeating the hook, right? And their Blackness was used to add authenticity to the performance of Blackness on the stage by the artist. And it's the same thing here. Sorry, Mike, but it is. It is that he is brought on to validate not caring. He is here to validate Danny's existing, or some of Danny's existing notions about Blackness, about Black Lives Matter, about cultural appropriation, you know, and it's very frustrating because, like, let me see, right now DKDKTV has 653,000 subscribers. Many of these are people who will never actually listen to a Black YouTuber talk critically about cultural appropriation, anti-Blackness, etc., especially from idols. But they are going to listen to this Black guy say that it's not a really big deal, it doesn't really matter, there are worse things out there. And it's like, yes, I could be hunted in the street and shot. Like, I could be killed by a cop. I could. But one of the things that leads to that easy dehumanization of Black people is the portrayal of us in media. It is the way that we are perceived, the way we are performed, and the way that other people wear us. I'm not saying that every instance of hood cosplay from an idol is akin to minstrelsy or blackface, but it is a very frustrating set of traditions in the idol industry, in the Korean hip hop industry, that it's like the only way to be authentically hip hop is to try to also be authentically African American. And these are people who really don't understand, and they aren't trying to understand why this is all really frustrating, why it's very complicated. So they really reach for the handy token. Again, medium offense, Mike, if you for some reason see this, but It's almost always a black guy. In the fandoms I'm in, the different K-pop fandoms that I'm in, sometimes it's a black woman, but it's someone tapped to bestow authenticity, validity, to make it okay to not give a shit, to hand wave away conversations about appropriation or anti-blackness or whatever. And it is very frustrating that this is just constantly happening, that this is, instead of having an actually nuanced conversation, because this is not a nuanced conversation, and I don't think it's as educational as it could be. We're really just getting validation of an existing and very problematic approach to understanding why these things matter, because it doesn't really, Mike doesn't really care. So how can he explain why you should care? So here's the thing about Koreans and Korean Americans kind of like bitching that international, like non-Korean in Korea fans don't care about Korean issues. So Juwon reports on Twitter, I think he's a reporter or journalist, he made a thread right around when the protests were happening, and it was basically like, oh, well, why don't international fans say anything? Where's our hashtag for Korean issues? And it is like, it is your job to make that hashtag. Like, no Korean person made Black Lives Matter. No Korean person made Black Lives Matter blow up as a hashtag. Black women made that hashtag. Black people made that hashtag go big. Also, cops keep killing us. That's why the hashtag keeps fucking trending, right? Just saying. But this expectation that like, oh well, oh, black fans are expecting BTS to say something. Well, why aren't they saying anything about our issues? People like really popular Korean platforms, right? Like TK Park, Juwon, probably even Danny and on DKDKTV frequently tell international fans to mind their fucking business. They mock international fans' zeal. They tell us that not to get involved in Korean news or Korean politics. When international fans have tried to trend hashtags, they've been shut down. They've been told mind your business, not your country, not your problem. You know, kind of like the not your fandom, not your problem thing. So I remember, so you have Burning Sun. I think that was the first time I saw that kind of trend for Western fandom, right? And of course, that was a very Korean thing. And I saw people like noted Korean and Korean American bloggers and journalists and whatever on Twitter tell international fans to stop trending things, stop talking about it, to mind our business, that it's bigger than your fandom. And it's like, okay. And then so fast forward to now, right? TK Park once again is on his, well, what about the migrants in Korea? And it's like, you, Korean American, you live in the United States, you can make a witty hashtag about the plight of migrant workers in Korea. And with your 20,000 something followers, you can then disseminate that hashtag and make it blow up. This is all about choice, right? In this aspect, it is a choice as a Korean to see Black Lives Matter trending, to see Black fans and other international fans go, hey, we would like to see our idols talk about this thing, since Black culture is very important to them and Black artists are very important to them. And then it is a choice to go, well, what about us? Why aren't y'all talking about us? You guys don't care about Korea. When Black fans in particular talk about Korea, we are shut down. We are told we're not actually Black fans. We're not Black people, especially people who have icons of idols, even if they have their name in their bio, or their identity in their bio, or selfies in their pin. They're told they have no business, no right to talk about things that matter to anyone, because it is not our place. We are told to stay in our lanes. And so it is fucked up that the response from so many Korean people, like Danny, is, well, why aren't you talking about our issues, since you expect us to talk about viewers. Well, actually, I don't want Danny of DKDKTV to talk about Black issues. I would actually love for him to stop. But also, if you're constantly told to shut up by people who claim to know better, right? By Korean people who have the tea, who are reading the news in Korean and go, no, this is none of your business, mind your business, don't talk about this, who aren't offering you resources to learn. How are you supposed to make a hashtag? How am I supposed to make a hashtag about what's going on at any given moment in Korea if the people who are disseminating that information on Twitter, so many of them have explicitly said for international fans, and some of them, Black fans in particular, not to get involved? Like, Danny, riddle me this. How are we supposed to get involved? I'm sorry, my Korean's not good enough for me to tackle a video about any news thing ever, actually. But you're still going to be like, well, Black Lives Matter is trending. Why isn't non-existent hashtag? Because you guys won't create one. Like, you guys bloggers. You guys, as in Korean bloggers. Like, it is very self-centered, very selfish, very anti-Black, that this is a recurring thing, that y'all on the internet are seeing Black Lives Matter and you're going, well, this hashtag is really popular. Why isn't my hashtag that I want popular? And it's like, we are all on Beyonce's internet. Please figure out how to make your own hashtags and then share them so that I can also share them and raise awareness. But if you're going to, bitch about Black Lives Matter while not offering any solutions for how international K-pop, K-hip hop fans can get informed and raise awareness, perhaps you should shut up. Watching this video is torture. I just need to let y'all know that. I don't know if I'll keep watching it. I have a little bit more to go, but I also have a whole ass day job that I should be doing. But one thing that I would like to bring up in my video is kind of the role that Black men do play in these conversations, and it's not a very good role. So a lot of the most popular reactor accounts, a lot of the most popular Black people in fandom, a lot of the most popular like YouTubers are Black men who kind of make a point out of being that Black guy who lets you know that cultural appropriation isn't a big deal, that there are more important things out there that kind of shape their personalities, their YouTube fandom facing personalities, to be welcoming and accepting of the problematic thing. Like, even if they have a problem with something, it doesn't stop them from liking it. It just stops them from calling it out. Like, and it's framed as like, this is just how we are, but whatever. Last year I went to Washington, D.C., and I think I've talked about this. I'm not sure if it was in any of my public-facing things, but I did on Twitter a couple months ago. But I went to Washington, D.C. for PCA 2019, where I spoke. I was one of the presenters on a panel about racism in fandom, and then I moderated the panel on race fail. A decade later, race fail is a really large fandom conflagration circling around anti-Blackness and kind of like white supremacy in fandom in the science fiction and fantasy communities. And so it was like a week of going to different panels. But one thing that I did was I wanted to go to a panel that was supposed to be on Korean hip hop because I really like it. And I go to this panel, and the person I wanted to see wasn't there, but there were two other Black people who were presenting, and one of the Black men was doing a presentation. The Black man was doing a presentation on Hyuna as like this kind of nexus of feminism and Blackness. So the way that my brain helpfully boiled it down for me was that he was basically calling her a Black woman. And That's weird. And I still have my notes from that day because it was just so freaking frustrating. But I remember, like, so the second that they were like, "Hey, does anybody have questions?" I shoot my hand up in the air and I'm like, "Hey, so why'd you do this thing?" And we went back and forth because this is a black guy. He's relatively handsome, like how Mike is, tall, dark skinned, attractive black man who is basically like not understanding how blackness is, like a multitude of it are understood in Korea. Like I've yet to go to Korea. That is completely true. So like, yes, you could absolutely be like, no, I don't care what you have to say. You'd be wrong, but you could say it. But I have friends, black friends and Korean friends who've experienced anti-blackness or witnessed it, you know, in Korea. And my friends are black women, and their experiences with anti-blackness in Korea are not great. They are objectifying, they're dehumanizing. It is really messed up. And one of the things that people don't get, I guess because it's maybe an intra-community thing, is that black men in particular kind of assume like, oh yeah, this is fine. Like black men are really cool no matter where they go, right? It's something that you see, studies show that black teenagers who move to white areas, or predominantly white areas or predominantly white schools, are treated better than black girls, right? Black boys are the cool kid, the white young men and women circle them. They try to like embrace them into the circle. It still hinges on racism, but these dudes are cool. Black girls are bullied not just by their peers who aren't black, but by the black boys in the schools who have seen it as a shortcut to being successful in these areas, and so they see that this stuff is happening, but they don't really think it applies to them, right? So Mike isn't seeing experiences with racism that one of my friends who just came back from Seoul, that she experienced. He's not having misogyny or misogynoir aimed at him. Can't. He's not he's not subject to the same things. Like I'm and because he's not in fandoms, right? So he's not seeing the fandoms, he's not in the K-pop sphere of fandom, or maybe even the K-hip hop sphere. He's not seeing the racism in international fandom spaces or from local fans toward international fans. And I'm not entirely sure that Danny is seeing this either, even though he is in the fandoms. Like, even when he talked about the Jim Jones thing, when they talked about the Jim Jones, what do you think, and the fandom reaction, right? Like, he didn't really talk about or recognize the anti-blackness from some members of the fandom. You know, it was just like him laughing at the idea that some of the fans were so obsessed with this idea of like building a narrative for Yoongi that they basically rewrote Korean history, but there was no kind of consideration for the fact that, well, a lot of anti-blackness happened in like a 36-hour period, and many of the people responsible, not that it was even like a majority of the fandom, didn't experience any consequences. They didn't apologize. They just moved on, or they locked, or they deleted, you know. And it's just very frustrating to constantly, like, this is their second or third video straight up that's about racism, anti-blackness, whatever. And I just don't think it's necessary from them. I don't think having a handy black friend on to validate whatever, or to be that token, is worth it. I don't think they need to be talking about race and racism until they actually educate themselves and move out of their established ideas. Because at this point, like, this video is an hour long that I'm watching. And not only are neither of them saying anything new, neither Mike nor Danny are saying anything new. about blackness or anti-blackness, they're actually kind of clinging, both of them, to separate older things that aren't super great. And it's just frustrating because, like, this video it's got 38,000 views and it's been out 2 days. And like TK Park's article on cultural appropriation, it's going to become kind of a standard for people. It's going to become a standard, and it's going to make it even harder to have the actually nuanced conversations that Black fans, especially like Black female fans, are trying to have, because, you know, Black men are seen as the unbiased experts when it comes to talking about Blackness, even though, like, the amount of ridiculous nonsense I've seen Black men condone in the name of, like, fitting in is, like, a lot, because I have 6 brothers. Like, it's a lot. But if you want to watch the video for yourself and have opinions, that is absolutely the thing I suggest you do. I think it could have been better. I think that Danny needs to read up on his facts, and I think that they are very slow drinkers, very slow. That's not related to any of that. It bothers me how slow they are at drinking. I don't know. It's just very frustrating, this video. I know that there are people who like it. I know people who like it. It's very eye-rolly to me as someone who spent a very large amount of time over the past year and a half looking at the things that they are actually talking about, you know? And I think that it's not a very helpful video because it doesn't really teach people much. It's just kind of like validating the establishment. It's just kind of like, yeah, this stuff happens. It's not very helpful. That's it.